An extremely lovable and dangerous robot gains sentience, and all it wants to do is watch soap operas. Damn good pitch, and you know what? All systems red, damn good book. All Systems Red is the first book in the MurderBot Diaries, and it is by Martha Wells. It is a novella, sci-fi tale about, just what I said in the intro, a security robot or sec robot who is able to override its own governor module, which is normally what keeps it kind of like AI instead of like some kind of sentient being. And doesn't want anyone to know about that because basically all it wants to do is watch its favorite media, which is kind of like soap operas, it sounds like from what it's described. That's the plot. It's a very simple plot, done incredibly well by Wells, and I really liked it. So I want to talk about it and dedicate one whole review to what I think is like the brilliant balancing act that this book has between comedy, drama, heart, silliness, and like themes that are deep and yet appropriate for the length that the work is. I don't have the physical book with me, but it is a short book. I listened to the audiobook. I imagine the book itself is like 120 pages maybe. Actually, I should probably look this up. Things you're supposed to do before you start recording a review. It's 144 pages, but you get what I'm saying. It's like the perfect length for a pickup between big books, whether you're in a single series, you want to read in between stuff, or like me, you kind of cycle through series. This is like a good thing to throw in where you get, a good book done pretty quickly in a day or two. This book is not just a palate cleansing book. There are some books, like some Discworld books or some other sort of standalone stuff that is like, you do it, it's very fun, but it's not going to last or stick with you. And while I do think All Systems Red is like a good, book to read in between stuff, it's also so well done, so funny, and so interesting that I think it on its own stands as a really great sci-fi book. There's also now an Apple TV adaptation that is just being released, I think, this month. So I kind of accidentally read this at a very good time for the fan base. I have not watched it as I record this video, but I plan to once I get a little further along in the series, book-wise, to see how that compares to the book itself. If you're watching this and that'd be something you'd be interested in me doing, please let me know in the comments below. Also, while I'm saying that, please subscribe, like, all that stuff is obviously super helpful. So we are not given a name of our main character, but this is a first-person perspective character where we are in the head of a sec robot or a security robot who is basically on a discovery mission with this group of humans. And we we start in media res where they're on a mission where a big creature tries to kill this group of scientists and the sec robot has to save this group of scientists. And this is the first scene of the book. This is not a spoiler, but it is a great example of what this book does well because it's an incredibly interesting sci-fi world, and like the character who attacks them is very interesting, and how the sec robot eventually is able to save the people who he's supposed to save is interesting and shows us the capacities of a sec robot and the violence that it can incur, which helps us understand why it's so hard for this now semi-sentient robot to exist in a world where it's so dangerous, and yet it has, I don't know if a good heart is a way to say it, but like is pretty much harmless as we know from narrator's perspective, but the world doesn't think so, or people who are reading from the narrator's perspective. And it's a sarcastic, funny robot, but also a robot that doesn't have all the answers. It's great. The very clear voice of the main character and the narrative style that Martha Wells brings to this book is like perfect. Pitch perfect at every point. It's very, very funny at times. It's very, very moving at times. And it's consistent. And like I said, this is a short book that uses all of its space incredibly well. Everything is purposeful and then gets out once its story is told. And by the way, the ending is like a banger of an ending that I enjoyed so much. I read this book basically in one sitting, or listened to it in one sitting. I was on a road trip. I started it just because I was interested, and I had got it from the library and like didn't stop for whatever the audiobook is, like 4.5 hours. It's that good. And I should say the audiobook performer is also excellent. His name is... Things you're supposed to do before you start recording a review. Kevin R. Free is the name of the audiobook reader. And as I'm looking, apparently there is some like people who think he doesn't do a good job. I think it's excellent. I think, and part of that is just like the writing is so good for Martha Wells. And I want to take a moment to talk about that writing style and what makes it really good. As I said, it's a first-person perspective, but it is a robot cyborg who is not really sure who it is. And Martha Wells really takes that seriously in every single description from this first-person perspective. It's quite clearly not like a regular human POV. It's at times wooden, and the way things are described are weird, and you realize the reason it's weird is because it's being described in an unhuman way, because we have an unhuman narrator. It continues in sort of a choppy way that you would expect sort of a machine to tell things, but not in such a way that it is distracting or frustrating as a reader, but just in a way that you can tell it is a narrative choice by the author. And it's consistent. It never takes you out of it, which is just so well done. And that defined voice really connects well to what I think are really great themes for such a short book, because the robot who he calls himself MurderBot, that has just like gained sentience, is in many ways like, I don't know, like a teenager or a young adult, and has incredible processing power, obviously, but like its personality has not developed, and it doesn't really know itself because it's just becoming independent. And so in many ways, it's a coming of age tale, but in a unique way, because the MurderBot doesn't need to learn any skills as far as like actual like intelligence, or again, like the processing power, or even like physical capacity. It's never in danger in the same way that like a human child would be, obviously, who's going through puberty, but it doesn't know itself. And so that creates some really interesting theme about like, what is personality? What does it mean to become yourself? And it's able to do it in sort of this heightened sci-fi way because it's not a human, but there's still human capacities within this sort of android sec robot world. So that I think is done so well. In a time where obviously AI is a huge talking point in our culture, I think this book does a really interesting job of raising the age-old question that is kind of ubiquitous in sci-fi literature of like, what is human intelligence? How is it distinguished from artificial intelligence, or like the capacity to compute or use equations or solve things with logic? Because I think it's clear that human intelligence is more than that. And in many ways, the MurderBot is trying to figure out that by trying to find an identity, as I said before. And so this interesting linkage between sort of human coming of age and human intelligence, what that means for a being who we are rooting for who is not human, is really interesting. And as far as I have been reading the series at this point, it's not a clear answer, but I think it's a great reflection of this hard question. And as part of that, I think it's a really interesting point of where art fits in with the idea of human sentience and intelligence and existence as a human, because MurderBot, it's not clear. I kind of read it as like one of the reasons he's able to hack this governor module and have some sort of identity is because he's spent so much time in human art, in soap operas and TV shows and media of various kinds, and has learned about human behavior and has wanted to emulate those characteristics that are seen in that art. And this is never explicitly said, but I do think Wells, it's a funny concept that this MurderBot just wants to watch TV, but it's also a really interesting reflection on what human art is and how it shapes us, and also how it is a key part of what it means to be human, particularly in a genre, sci-fi, which really focuses on kind of the hard sciences many times. Having art be such a elevated part of a sci-fi story is really, really interesting and fun. And again, all of these themes I'm getting in 144 pages, which is incredible. I mean, it's really, really a unique and well-done thing. I am so excited about MurderBot. I'm going to be reading all of the series for sure, and I'm going to be probably watching the TV show. It's just so good. As I record this, I've already read the second book. Shh, don't tell anyone. And it was really good as well, but different enough that it's really fun. This is not about the second one. I'll maybe release like a series review if I ever get to the end of it, because people don't want to watch reviews of each one. But MurderBot, great. What did you think about it? Let me know if you've read it. Have you seen the TV show? Should I watch the TV show? Should I not? Anything should I know going into the next couple books in the series? Please no spoilers. And other than that, first in, last out.